Okay, guys, we're going to go over some of the most commonly missed questions, on the test here. And I kind of went over a couple points on them as well, just to make sure, again, that we're good for the retest tomorrow. You're going to have the whole time to test tomorrow also. Part of the issue with a couple of you guys was you just ran out of time. So you're going to have an extra half hour tomorrow. So let's start going through this. Okay, so this was one of the most commonly missed questions. I think like 20%, maybe 30% got this question right. And part of the problem with this, guys, is that you do not read the vocab. Vocab is so important. It says that given that R is the midpoint of QS, so you pause and you want to ask yourself, okay, well, what does that tell me? If R is the middle, that means these two pieces are equal. And again, we haven't done this much, but we mark that with a little symbol like that. We call that a congruent symbol. So this piece plus this piece, that piece equals that piece. Let me backtrack here. And we have those two pieces. Another thing that I think you guys did not do was you were not copying the pictures onto your paper, and you really should have. Every single question, copy the picture onto your paper and label it. Don't just stare at it. Because once we label this, QR is 6x and RS is 2x plus 9. And again, because of the word midpoint, cannot emphasize that enough, that's why we know these two pieces are equal, because R is in the middle, and so it has to be the same on each side, right? If I'm in the middle, I'm the same distance to this side as I am to that side. So if we see midpoint, you are going to take your two pieces they give you and set them equal to each other because they are equal. So once we do that, we got to solve. We just got to be careful how we do this. I'm going to subtract the 2x over. We got 4x equals 9. Divide the 4 away. It's also very probable, guys, that a lot of your problems were your math. You may have gotten the setup right, and then your algebra was not good. So be very careful. Make sure you're going slow and doing the opposite when you're moving across an equal line. So I'm going to go ahead and get 9 divided by 4 as a decimal. 9 divided by 4 is 2.25. Here was the other problem, guys. So many people did not heed my warning that almost nowhere on this test was it just like solve for x. You have to go back and see what it is they actually want. So since they want QS, we look at the picture and we see what QS is. Now here's why this one was also tricky. QS is all of this, right? So if x is 2.25, again, that was the 9 divided by 4. If x is 2.25, we needed to plug all of it in to both of these and get it together. So I'm going to actually plug because they want the whole thing. If it just said find QR, then I'd only have to plug into 6x. If it just said find RS, then I'd only have to plug in here, right? But since it says find QS, we're going to plug into both and add our answers together. So I got 6 times 2.5. This is QR. I've got 2 times 2.25 plus 9. This is RS. I'm going to end up adding these two answers together, and that's going to give me the whole thing. So 6 times 2.25 is 13.5 plus 2 times 2.25 plus 9 is also 13.5. That makes sense because we said these two halves are equal. So this gives me 27. So that should have been your final answer, not the x. Again, almost nowhere in this test will they go solve for x. It's always solve for x and then go back and plug it in. Almost always. So let's summarize this. If we are told that a line has a midpoint, if you see the word midpoint, and then we're given equations for the two halves, this half and this half, what should we do? Add the two halves and set them equal to 180, set the two halves equal to each other, or add the two halves and set equal to the whole segment. Go ahead and answer. Well, what we just did was B. We set the two halves equal to each other. A cannot be correct because 180 degrees is for angles, and we're talking about segments. So when you're dealing with segments, you're not talking about 180 degrees. This is segment addition. We didn't know the whole segment, we just knew that 2 halves were equal. So we had to set the 2 halves equal to each other. We didn't know the whole thing. So that's going to be our answer. If you see the word midpoint, set the 2 halves equal to each other and solve. Okay, oh my gosh, distance formula, guys. You have your notes. Look at your notes. Make sure you have distance formula copied correctly. You subtract inside the parentheses, squared, plus in between the parentheses, oops, y2 minus y1 squared. So subtraction inside both the parentheses plus in between the parentheses. Now here's the other thing. Again, guys, heed my advice. Stack the points on top of each other. Write them down. 3, -1, and 4, -2. The reason why I tell you to do this is because, again, in each parentheses, we need the x's together and we need the y's together. These are my x's and these are my y's. So when you stack them on top of each other, it's easier to see what numbers go together. So I want you to take a second and write it out and try and plug it in correctly, and then you can check and make sure you're doing it correctly. I'm going to show you the answer here. Okay, we are back. So here was the common mistake. This is subtraction. It needs to say subtraction. So I have x minus x. I have 3 minus 4. You could have also done 4 minus 3 and you would actually still be correct. Squared plus. You have to go slow and make sure you're not missing out any pieces of the equation. Now here's where the common mistake happens. This is already subtraction there, but I have some negative numbers. So what's going to end up happening is my second y is going to go minus a minus. It's going to become a plus. Now that's only because these are negative numbers. Over here, these are positive, so it was just 3 minus 4. But this is going to be -1 minus -2. That's the mistake a lot of people missed out on, is that, again, this is 3 minus 4. This is -1 minus -2. Recall, now again, I'm going to say, though, you can plug this entire thing in the calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that, because your calculator is there. The first thing I need to hit is the square root button. So here's that, square root. You have to hit that first, guys. And then from there, I type it in exactly as I see it. I don't leave anything out. Parentheses, 3 minus 4, close parentheses. Parentheses, 3 minus 4, close parentheses. Oh, ooh, be careful, guys, because this happened to me a lot of times. I see how I'm outside of the radical. I need to fix that. I need to get back underneath. 3 minus 4, close parentheses, and then square it. Plus, I'm going back and I'm writing it exactly as I see it. Parenthesis, -1 minus a -2 squared. Making sure I'm staying underneath the radical. Parentheses, -1, watch this, minus a -2. You can do that, yes? Close parentheses squared, and there's my answer. That's it, 1.41. 1.41, is that what I said? Yep, 1.41. There you go. And that's it. So guys, be very, very careful. Let's go ahead and talk through some of these common mistakes here. With distance formula, what goes inside the parentheses? Go ahead and answer. You have it written down on your notes. Inside the parentheses is subtraction. And then in between, so where we have this question mark here, what goes here? When we're in between the parentheses, we should add. And again, the very first button you press when you put it in the calculator is a square root or radical. They mean the same thing in this case. You have to hit square root first. Okay, let's go on to the next question. So before we actually do the next question, please copy this onto your paper. I'm going to go ahead and you can pause the video here and take a second to copy it down and then just click ready to go when you're ready to go. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. You have this picture copied. Make sure your letters are in the correct order, otherwise you're going to get jumbled up. What I want you to do, we're going to pause the video again. You're going to put a 1 inside angle ABE. I'm going to go ahead and give you this one so you understand what I mean. A couple problems you guys had again was that you didn't know how to identify angles. Maybe if you did, the problem was you weren't copying the pictures onto your paper. Remember that tomorrow you're going to have a whole hour and a half. So you're going to have more time to try it. If you were trying to like save time and go fast and not copy the pictures, because you really need to copy the pictures. So here's angle A to B to E. So with your pencil, here's what you should do. Angle A to B to E. That's talking about this angle. So I'm going to put a 1 right there because that's what it says to do. A 1 inside angle A to B to E. So I want you guys to go ahead. We're going to pause the video again. And you are going to put a 2 inside this angle, 3 inside that angle, 4 inside that angle. Follow with your pencil. Go ahead and give it a shot. Okay, so hopefully you had time for that. So we're going to follow with our pencils, C to B to D. C to B to D. You should have put the 2 right there. Now we have C to B to A. That should be C to B to A. That's the 3. And therefore the last one has to be a 4. But again, that's D to B to E or E to B to D. It works both ways. So that's how, again, we need to be careful about what angle are they talking about. If you are looking at the wrong angle, you can very easily do the question wrong. Because if you recall, when we have a picture like this, we have special relationships. So if you're thinking we're looking at different angles, then you're going to think you have the wrong relationships. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. So this was a very commonly missed question. Very few people got this one right. So let's look at this. Now again, what I'm going to do is I would copy this onto my paper. So you need to pause the video if you need to copy it onto your paper. And then I would look at what they tell me and I would put it on my picture so I know what angles are being talked about. If you just stared at this picture and then didn't write it down, didn't copy it down, that may be part of the reason why you got it wrong. Copy the pictures, guys. So WXY. Let's go ahead and label this in the picture. W to X to Y. 6x plus 15 goes right there. Now we have W to X to Z. W to X to Z. 7x plus 35 goes right there. So here's what we need to do. We need to solve for x. And then again, guys, I'm warning you, the questions will never just have you solve for x. You're going to have to go back and plug it into something. But we have to look at our picture and see what is the relationship between these two angles. Again, guys, you have your notes right now. Look at them, yeah? The relationship between these two angles, notice if I draw a little half circle right here, a half of a circle, a half of a rotation is 180 degrees. These two angles are touching, and together they create this straight line. So a straight line has 180 degrees. It opens up to 180. This is called a linear pair. They open up to a straight line and they add to 180. So let's go ahead and add them to 180. Literally, that's what we do. 6x plus 15 is the first angle. Added, put a plus sign to the other angle. Together, these equal 180. Now again, that's because they were a linear pair. If they were vertical angles, we're going to talk about that on the next slide again, just to refresh. If they were vertical angles, that means they're across from each other. These are touching. Across from each other means they just touch at like their vertexes, at their points. They would be equal, and then we'd set them equal to each other. But in this case, we're going to add them. So we have 13x plus, we have from here, this is 50. I just combined like terms, equals 180. And then we would go ahead and solve it. So minus 50, minus 50. We got 13x equals 130. That's the 180 minus the 50. Divide by 13. And then that is 10 in your calculator. I'm going a little quickly, but hopefully you tried it on your own to make sure you were doing it correctly. Now again, here was the common mistake. A lot of people stopped and they said, oh yeah, good, there's an answer for x equals 10. No, you will never on this test. If you're solving for x, you have to go back and plug it in somewhere. That was where a lot of you guys missed your points. You solved for x correctly and then that was all you did. Don't forget, it's going to happen every single time you have to solve for x. Now we have to look at what they want us to plug into. We are plugging into wxy, which is this equation, wxy. So that's where I'm going to plug in my x. Go ahead and let's try it. Angle wxy is 6x plus 15. I'm going to plug in my 10. We got 6 times 10 plus 15. That's 60 plus 15. That should be 75. And that's your answer. A lot of people, again, made some pretty common mistakes. Okay. So to sum up this one, linear pairs, are angles that are adjacent, meaning they share a side. Again, in that last picture, they shared this side, right? Both of those angles have that side. So linear pairs are angles that share a side, and they importantly add to 180 because that's how you get your equation. So go ahead and choose from the multiple choice which pair given to you in the multiple choice is going to be a linear pair. There are 4 different pairs I could possibly have. You're just going to choose one of them. So hopefully you chose angle 1 and angle 4. Those are a linear pair. However, again, they're not the only linear pair. 1 and 2 are also a linear pair together. 2 and 3 are also a linear pair. And 4 and 3 are also a linear pair because they share a side and they add to 180. Now let's talk about vertical angles. So there are 2 pairs of vertical angles here, and those are angles that are across from each other. Again, I could like draw a line through the center of the angle of the cross, and most importantly, they are equal because that's going to make my setup. I would set those 2 equations equal to each other if they were vertical angles. Like, go ahead and pick again from multiple choice what options we have here for vertical angles. So hopefully you chose 4 and 2. Again, 1 and 3 are also vertical angles. We just said one vertical angle pair is 4 and 2. Okay, last equation here real quick. So this was, again, another very commonly missed question. Very few kids got this one right because we haven't dealt with this picture as often. Now, we should know what this means here. This means what? 90 degrees. That angle is 90 degrees. Now, what we see here, again, copy the picture. Label the equations. I have MAH is 4x plus 10. M to A to H. So I'm going to erase this here real quick. 4x plus 10 is this angle. And the other angle is x plus 20. Now what we should realize about this picture is these 2 angles together, it goes tick, tick. Together, they make 90 degrees. What that means is that's your equation. They add to 90 degrees. Go ahead and try to write your equation. Okay, here it is. If you weren't sure, that's okay, you can check. They add to 90 degrees. I'm literally putting a plus sign in between my two equations. So I'm going to solve this real quick because I got to get going here actually. We've got 4x and an x, that's 5x. We've got 10 and a 20. Minus 30, minus 30. We've got 5x equals 60. Again, I'm just solving this really quickly here. X ends up equaling 12. Now again, oh my gosh, guys, they're not asking you to just solve for x. We have to go back and plug in to what they want. If they want angle HAT, that's this right here, x plus 20. So here's angle HAT, x plus 20, and my x is 12. That means our answer should have been 32. Okay, I know I did those kind of fast, guys, but I just wanted to kind of refresh. Hopefully we can see where we made our mistakes. The important things are, again, copying the pictures, labeling them. Once you go back and solve for x, you have to plug it in. Those were the common mistakes.